very inspirational. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this particular interview with you.
I studied Japanese, I spoke English, and now Hebrew has no relationship to either of those languages. It was completely starting afresh. And then to learn that it's a reborn language. Mm-hmm. People didn't speak it as an everyday language for over 1,000 years.
Right.
And it was basically recreated for the purpose of use in the modern nation. And to struggle with learning a new language. And then after we'd been here 2 or 3 years, of course, we had our first war experience. Mm. And in 1991, the first Gulf War took place. And if you remember, Saddam Hussein, who was ruling Iraq at the time, had taken over Kuwait. And the first President Bush had given him a countdown, a deadline. You get out of Kuwait by this date or there's going to be war. And so the whole world was counting down. Yeah. And what Saddam Hussein said in the Arabic press, which was, of course, immediately translated into the Israeli press, was that if any Western power attacks me, I will immediately attack Israel. I mean, that may not sound logical, but in this part of the world, that's how it works, okay? I'll immediately attack Israel. And he was boasting that he would burn half of Israel with weapons of mass destruction. Right. So in the countdown to the war, we were following our government's instructions to get gas masks. We had 2 small children at the time. Wow. We had to seal a room in our apartment, and they gave instructions how to put tape on the windows and seal the doors. Our son was too small to have a gas mask issued to him, so what they issued him was a small plastic pup tent that you had to thrust the little baby inside, zip it up, and then you could kind of feed him a bottle with the gloves, that they had.
Oh, wow.
And the fear was that Saddam Hussein would carry out his promise and attack Israel with nerve gas.
It's a very strange characterization to hear the words, our first war.
Yeah.
And I can remember watching the news back in the States, with the first Gulf War and the countdown and everything. But boy, being here and coming from, a place like the United States to this hotbed, right? Which biblically over time, I mean, it's just always been that way, right? And here you are, having to, get tents for your little child and have a whole preparation done, and it became a new way of life. So I guess that's culture shock, huh?
Well, everybody who becomes a citizen of Israel has to have a first war, it seems.
Yeah.
And this was ours. And as new immigrants we were just barely being able to understand the television and the radio, when to go in the room, when to come out of the room, when to put on the gas mask or not. It was a dislocating and frightening experience. But we also saw the hand of God miraculously protect the nation. Yeah. I think what was said after that, 39 big Scud missiles fell in this country, 9 of them in our city of Haifa. Mm-hmm. And these were not the little rockets that are shot by Hamas in the south or Hezbollah from Lebanon. Those rockets, they fire by the dozens from the back of trucks. Right. And they're dangerous because they're anti-personnel terror weapons. They're loaded with ball bearings, and if you're in the open, they can seriously wound you or even kill you. But these Scud missiles they had like 500 pounds of explosives in them. Mm. They would take out entire buildings. Mm. But I think it was about 100 days of war, only one person was actually killed as a direct result of those missiles, which is a miracle. Yeah. In fact, there are some people who say that during that first Gulf War, the death rate in Israel actually went down. Hmm. Fewer people than normal actually died, and if that's true, it's because Israelis didn't drive as much.
Interesting.
They only launched the missiles at night, and so you knew when it was like 4 or 5 in the afternoon here, it was already 6 or 7 in Iraq, and so people stayed off the roads.
Right. What's very interesting is many of the people I've met here since we've been in Israel have this sense of God's protection. Yeah. For the state of Israel. Yeah. And they don't have it just abstractly, but they like to cite specific instances where things that would defy normal logic occur that seem to just protect this place.
Absolutely. Not only have we heard those stories, but we've experienced it ourselves. And when we came through that war experience, mm-hmm. I think something changed in us.
Yeah.
After the first Gulf War, we felt like we'd somehow turned some kind of spiritual corner, and that our roots, after 3 years, were finally beginning to go down into the rocky soil of this land, and that we began to feel like we were Israelis.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that just in the months after the end of the first Gulf War, in the spring of 1991, God put us together with another couple. They were pioneering a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center in another part of Haifa. A small Bible study had started there. We came alongside of them and began to pray together, and God spoke to us that spring, start a new congregation. And that's how this ministry was born 26 years ago in 1991.
Wow. So leading up to all the anxiety before your first war, as you described it, did that have any impact on your faith? Or were you starting to question whether you really did the right thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell me what that was like.
Being an immigrant was one of the hardest things I ever did. Nothing can prepare you for that. You really start your life again. And in our case, we didn't really have family here. We didn't have friends. We didn't have connections. We didn't know the language. We didn't understand the culture. We didn't know how to get things done in the society, in our neighborhood. Within a year or two, our children were speaking more Hebrew than we were.
Yeah.
After a while, the years pass and you're begging your children to read the electricity bill to you, and you can't help them with their homework.
Right.
And if something happens in the school, you can't walk in and help them sort it out.
Right.
There's this huge feeling of helplessness, and people look at you and wonder, how long are you going to stick around here, because they've seen so many people come and get discouraged and go. There wasn't that sense of commitment and permanence in the relationships, and so it was really difficult. And now I realize that's the experience of all refugees and all immigrants.
Right.
And I have a great compassion for people who are forced to leave their homes and start afresh somewhere else. In fact, years later, we were privileged to be able to start a shelter here for refugees and reach out to strangers who have walked across the borders of Israel. And so so we've been able to share out of compassion what we learned in those early days of difficulty as new immigrants here.
That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.